And I went down there.
Be sincere. A good smile has the same effect as a puppy's tail. When a puppy wags...
They made us do all these crazy things to get out of ourselves, and so we stood on tables and did all kinds of things.
That was Warren Buffett on becoming Warren Buffett. There's more to come on what he saw on the paper. Hi, this is Chanel. Let's talk about personal development before we talk about money. Let me share with you how I took myself to the next level with one of the best personal development programs in the world.
Welcome to Cash Flow Formula, insights into the world of investing, and learn how to build wealth through cash flow, simplifying the complicated world of alternative investments for you. If you like what you are hearing and want to learn more, consider subscribing to the show wherever you listen to it. Here's your host, Chanel Werasinke, founder of SNW Investments.
Hello, good afternoon to you. Good to see you again after a few months.
That's Gary Macpherson, the director of Dale Carnegie Melbourne, and he's been associated with the Dale Carnegie Australia for 40 years. Gary, tell us a bit about yourself and Dale Carnegie Australia.
I'll give you a summary of the history. It was back in February 1981 that I first got involved. I had just finished doing the Dale Carnegie course just like you. And back then it was a 14-week program, but now it's a sort of 8-week program. There are the 12 modules that we cover over the 8 weeks. So February 81, worked in Dale Carnegie Sydney and also in Canberra until August 1996, and then started in Melbourne in September 96 and have been here for the last 25 years. So there's a total of 40 years with the organisation so far.
If you are still not familiar with Dale Carnegie and his work, I encourage you to pick this all-time best-selling book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Here's Gary again.
Today I was looking up some old Dale Carnegie material. So this is back in the 60s. So, Dale Carnegie came to Melbourne in 1955 and then came to Sydney, rest of Australia in 1956. So I was looking up the a whole lot of old clippings and articles. And so, yes, my father got involved in Dale Carnegie in about early 60s, about 62, 64, somewhere around there. And about 1966, he became sort of full-time in that business. So it was a family business at one stage until I sort of came to Melbourne and my brothers ran Dale Carnegie Sydney for a little while, but they haven't been involved for quite some time. So yes, my father's involved. I'm the only Macpherson still involved in the business. Yeah.
I had been terrified of public speaking. I couldn't do it. I'd throw up. And I knew if I didn't cure it then, I'd never cure it. And so I saw an ad in the paper for the Dale Carnegie course, which worked on developing your ability to speak in public. And I went down there.
Be sincere. A good smile has the same effect as a puppy's tail. When a puppy wags...
They made us do all these crazy things to get out of ourselves, and so we stood on tables and did all kinds of things. If I hadn't have done that, my whole life would have been different. So in my office, you will not see the degree I got from the University of Nebraska. You'll not see the master's degree I got from Columbia University, but you'll see the little award certificate I got from the Dale Carnegie course. As a matter of fact, every week, the instructor would give a pencil to whoever had done the most with what we'd learned the week before. And so in the 4th or 5th week, I proposed to her mother, and she said yes. And so that week, I won the pencil, and I also got engaged. I mean, it was an incredible week.
Seems like Warren managed to capitalize on his investment even before the program ends. I would say the same thing about my journey so far. Dale Carnegie Program has been running for a long time in Australia, and here's Gary recollecting his memories from the past.
go back even further, I've been involved 40 years, but I speak to people who did the course 60 years ago. So if they did the course in 1960 and I'm in contact with them now, so over 60 years ago, and quite regularly I have people who call me and say, hello, I did the Dale Carnegie course back in 1958, back in Melbourne or Brisbane or Sydney, and I just want to confirm some details because I'm writing my life's memoirs. And then we get talking and they talk about the change and the development that's happened since then. And normally, there's been some great improvement. So that's a live test. If you can remember a training course you did 60 years ago, that tells you something that obviously was significant. So, yes, we hear from those people as well as people like, for example, in your group, whether it be some small changes or huge changes that people have had.
I was an introverted person for a better half of my life. However, I was put in the spotlight where I needed to come out of my shell and express myself freely to my audience. Let me tell you something, that was really uncomfortable. I managed to slowly progress through the weeks and I kept working hard on the skills that I was newly introduced. Alright, now that you know how I got started with my training and how it was going so far, let's hear from Gary again what he's seen as the instructor.
I mean, if I just go through some of the list of the people that were in the class with you, in terms of, just being happier is one of the big outcomes of the program. So on the final night, if you go from night 1 to night 8, the most significant change is just happiness and joy in people. Why? Because they've overcome something or they've developed something or they can do things they couldn't do before, such as volunteer and put their hand up, get a promotion at work, in terms of speaking at an important family function or a business function, or being able to have greater satisfaction in controlling worry and stress. I mean, even if we look at you, when I met you on that very first evening, there was no spark, man. It was just, it was like, come on. And, it was like just the end of the program, just in terms of, even if I see you now, I mean, it's just, significant change in your outward mannerism, lots and lots of famous people go through this program, sporting identities. Everyone knows the name of these people, and whether it be an AFL or whether they be in rugby league or rugby union or V8 supercar drivers, right through to golfing professionals, household names, gold medalists at the Olympics go through these programs. But I have those sort of joy with the everyday person that goes through that really has some small changes, big changes, whatever they are, and you see them 5 or 10 years later, and that just in terms of the change that's happened to them, it's always they are a better person as a result of doing the program.
How to win friends and influence people single-handedly managed to change the way I interact with people around me and be a better communicator. What I ultimately wanted to become was to be a better salesman and a deal maker. To be a great deal maker, you need to be a better communicator. You need to be able to understand what frames are coming at your way and how to frame others' behaviors. Well, coming back to the conversation again, Gary will share an interesting story happened during our session.
I hear that expression quite often, people were stuck in a rut.
Yeah,
stuck in doing the same thing every single day, stuck in doing the same behaviours and the same self-destructive behaviours and hiding and not stepping up so yes, it does make it. It was interesting because in your class there was a gentleman that came one night at about 20 minutes before we started, and there was about half a dozen of us in the room, and he said, I did this course in 1961, and do you still do this? And he went through it. He knew the words, still knew the words. And I said, yes, we still do it. Changed the words. But so he recalls that from more 50 years ago. So, yeah, there you go.
this is one of the fascinating formulas that I learned during the program. I'll let you in on the magic formula. Here's Gary explaining it for you. On top of this, I have added a detailed description about this on my website if you want to learn more about.
The magic formula is a method of communication, and it's one of the key reasons people do the program is that self-confidence so that they can speak whether it be in meetings or large settings or important business functions, family functions. And the magic formula, the communication formula, is all about storytelling, and storytelling in terms of communicating a personal example, a personal experience, and then finding a way to finish it. Most people struggle, how am I going to finish? And it very quickly just says to people, what's the point of the story? What's the key point you want the audience to get?
Yeah.
And then if they get it, what would be the outcome or benefit for them if they followed their example and their story so that they would, learn something from it. So personal storytelling, action or point, and the moral or the outcome or the benefit. Yeah, that's what the magic formula is. Every single day, people, give directive or call people to action or want to influence people.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what the formula, it does. I mean, most TV commercials, most radio commercials, based on this formula.
Yeah.
So any ad you see online, for example, is based on this formula as well.
Teamwork is essential in finance world. You build not just a good team, but a great team. You hold the key to success. But how do we do that? That's the one big question. Here's a simple, straightforward answer. Hire 10 out of 10s. Never settle for less. This concept was made famous by Stephen Schwarzman, the founder of Blackstone. Well, hiring 10s having definitely seemed to be working for Stephen and Blackstone. I recently started expanding my team with this concept in my mind. With me now, there are 9 other great people working. Well, let's hear from Gary about teamwork and cooperation principles.
It's interesting. I mean, if I just give you some background to the question, I mean, it would seem it's fairly easy that people would work together and get on and find a common bond so they can find a common outcome. That would seem to be a fairly straightforward assumption. But for some reason, it's becoming more and more difficult for us to work together. And the Dale Carnegie principles are all about being more intelligent in terms of what you say or what you do. And if you keep in mind in terms of changing your behaviour, therefore there's going to be a change in other people's behaviours.
Yeah.
And that's very simply what the teamwork and cooperation principles are all about, is just considering the other person, looking at in terms of their world, seeing what you can do to bring the two worlds together, and then make the one world in terms of cooperating, team working, and going for the same goal.
Yeah.
And very simply, it requires you to make some change so that there is change in the other person. Very simple.
Empathy and trying to see the world through other person's perspective could make a huge difference in your life and relationships with others. As the world is now forced to live and work remotely, these soft skills are becoming more and more important by the day. So Gary, explain what Dale Carnegie is preaching when it comes to building relationships in a world like this.
Yeah. Well, as the world moves more and more online, we tend to want to focus on the 5% that people did wrong as opposed to the 95% they did right. And so these teamwork and cooperation principles, aren't new, although they've been in existence for thousands of years. And so Dale Carnegie just put them in the book in 1936, and they're more important today than they ever were. As we go online, as I said, we want to focus on what's wrong with people or find an edge in what's wrong with people or what they said or what they did, so that all of a sudden now that we develop this massive nothing, and consequently we find ways to destroy teamwork every single day as opposed to ways to, we can go through anything that's happened. If you look at the news today, they're constantly looking at some sharp little edge to manufacture a story. And we want to stay away from that world. That's what Dale Carnegie is about, the real world, not a manufactured world. Yeah.
With the COVID lockdowns that are being imposed on us over the last 2 years, mental health plays a big role in keeping our overall health at its best. Finding the happiness on the things that you do is the key here. Enjoy the little things. You start the day with gratitude. Give thanks to what you have already. This is one of the key things that I do 7 days a week without any fail. And that is writing down what I'm grateful for. This let me start the day with gratitude and happiness. Your thoughts become things. Let me repeat that for you. Your thoughts become things. That is true, if you believe it or not. Law of attraction is at work to manifest your thoughts. So here's Gary with his thoughts on mental health and current issues right now.
Well, firstly, I'm not a mental health specialist or help people, in this area. I mean, it is becoming a more important aspect. It's very interesting because when I first started in Dale Carnegie, worry and stress was not a talked about subject. Mental health was not a talked about subject as it is today. And it is for some people now, it's the number one benefit they get from the training in terms of greater happiness. How do we bring about greater happiness? Well, you have less worry, less stress, less unhappiness, less doubt, less fear, and therefore you have the opposite of it in terms of greater joy and happiness. So again, the Dale Carnegie principles are all about just changing your behaviours or reaction. As you know, we talk about that very simple formula: A plus B equals C. And that's one of the significant things people get from this training. A being the activation event or something that triggers you or activates the worry and stress, plus B, your behaviour or your response, equals the outcome or consequence. That's what the C stands for. A plus B equals C. So change B, therefore you get a change in C. And that's what the Dale Carnegie worry and stress principles are all about. And as I said, that's the number two benefit, but for some people it's the number one benefit they get from the training.
In my first week at the program, I was handed over a little golden color book. It was tiny, seemed like a pocket book. This book was something special. It's something you can't buy. Here's Gary once again.
What we call, and it's also, people know the name, we call it the Golden Book, and in the past, other things were called Golden Books as well. But the first time that I learned the importance of this Golden Book was, I remember this is in Sydney, in the suburb Kingsgrove, and there was a gentleman who went through the Dale Carnegie course, so this is about the mid-80s. He went through the program at about the mid-60s, and in his wallet, he had a little cardboard covered book with tape all over it, wrapped all around it. Why was the tape? Because the book had worn out, the binding had worn out. And what was that book? He said, I look at this every single day and I read it. So that's the Golden Book, which is a summary of the How to Win Friends principles and the How to Stop Worrying principles. And a lot of graduates either have it electronically, which you can get now, or they have it in a paper form that they carry and read. Yeah. So it's a great reminder and a great inspiration for people in terms of continuing to apply what they've learned so that they have better lives.
All right, I guess now that we have touched base on mindset and getting over worries and many other things, we could go ahead and start the conversation on private equity and real estate in the upcoming episodes. So here's Gary with his contact details if you want to get in touch with him.
Well, old-fashioned, you can ring me. So we don't get it. The phone used to ring back in the 80s in Sydney. The phone used to ring all the time, and of course now most people you can either ring or you can contact us through online. I mean, you just simply go to the Dale Carnegie Victoria site, and you'll see Gary Macpherson and my contact details there. So you can email me or go through, contact us, and the inquiry will come through. And then we can go further from there.
Well, with that, I want to wrap this episode up. And in the next episode, one of my good friends and a financial advisor are going to debunk some industry myths. Stay tuned for the next episode to hear from a financial advisor. Until then, bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the show. Remember to join us again next week for another episode. Learn more about what we discussed here by visiting our website cashflowformula.com.au. Until next time.